No other country would think of something like this because China thinks big. Belt and Road is an extraordinary idea, I think, very, very novel.
It's been 10 years, so now looking back, do you have new ideas or new reflections on this initiative?
China articulates its own history into the present. It's a big country with a big history. For there's so much it can draw on in its own past, the country's become much more conscious of its past as it's rising. So Belt and Road is a sort of epic project, epic narrative, epic reflection on Chinese history. Belt and Road also quintessentially was the expression of what China's approach to the world was. We are a developing country. Our main relationships with the world, our most important relationships in the world, the future of the world is bound up with the developing countries. The developing countries account for 85% of the world's population. This era of humanity is defined by the progress of the developing countries. So from the mid-1970s, they represented only about a third of the global GDP, and today they represent 60%. I think it's been remarkably successful. It's a hugely ambitious idea.
Do you think internationally public opinion towards Belt and Road has shifted from being conservative or even skeptical to rather positive and optimistic?
I think the developing world is basically overwhelmingly signed up to the idea because it feels that it is of benefit to it. So for them, yes, one of the achievements of Belt and Road is to make development one of the central priorities on the global agenda. That would never happen in the West. The West doesn't think like that. It was caught completely flat-footed on Belt and Road. The Americans, I think, said very little early on. Then they decided to criticize it. Then they decided they were going to have a rival. And so they talk about a rival. Excuse me, where's the rival? Where's the great competitor? I mean, you know, it's over 10 years now and nothing's appeared. What does that tell us? It tells us that they couldn't do something like this. Their heart's not in it. They don't really believe in it because their relationship with the developing world isn't like this. Because historically, their relationship with the developing world has been a repressive colonial relationship. It still has that mentality towards the developing countries. The whole notion of Tanxia, the notion of the world and so on. China finds it very easy to think like this. The Western countries, like the States, do not think like that. In nation state terms, they think in terms of blocks. The world is made up of, you know, lots of different peoples and civilizations and so on. And rather than thinking in terms of blocks, which has been the Western way, we should think of what are the common interests of people. And in the era of globalization, there are wider, broader interests that bring sections of humanity and ultimately the whole of humanity together.
So up until now, 10 years on, is it very clear, crystal clear that China's Belt and Road Initiative is not neo-colonialism at all?
I always think it's a bit rich when I hear the Western countries talking about China's neo-colonial project. You know, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror, do something about your own history first. The success or failure of the project, it won't take place in Western newspapers or whatever they want to write about it. That depends on the developing world. If the agreements work for the developing world, help to transform it, then Belt and Road has been a success. And ask the developing countries, ask them what their opinion is. This is a very, very utterly new kind of project. It's experimental. Has China made a lot of mistakes with Belt and Road? Of course it has. I mean, it's inconceivable that something like this couldn't happen without problems. If there are no problems at all, then excuse me, but there's no project.
Is the path ahead going to be tougher for the next decade of the Belt and Road Initiative, or is it going to be actually easier?
I think it depends partly on what the state of the global economy is, what the state of the Chinese economy is, and so we'll just have to see. But I think it's here to stay and it will stay.